Are we really as free as we brag to be? I think our forefathers would be rolling over in their graves if they could see what was going on in Washington today. Our ancestors have paid the ultimate price, even with their lives, that we will have the freedom today. Our country used to take great pride in being resourceful and prosperous. All men were created equal and had the right for freedom. There is a huge economic problem in our country, and it is on the political forefront. Some Americans believe that tax cuts to the rich will create jobs, and this is called the trickle-down effect, which says if we give tax cuts to the rich, that it will trickle down that money to the poor by creating jobs. Opponents of this form of tax cut have used historical data to disprove this idea of the trickle-down effect. After studying about it, I too believe that the trickle-down effect should never be used again on a political platform. The trickle-down effect has been disproven repeatedly, and the voters should never ever vote for it, because first we would have to trust in the rich and the corporations that they would be ethical and honest and trustworthy. Second, the concept as a whole takes our real American freedom away from us. And third, it has been proven that it has been a huge waste of American tax dollars. The first reason that I wanted to talk today is the ethics problem. It has been an overwhelming, disgusting overabundance of greed that has enveloped our country. I've always said that the trickle-down effect would work if we lived in a perfect world. But as we all know, we are far from perfect right now. Politicians seem to be following the money trail, and we've talked about political reform for years to no success. Corporations have got the money to staff attorneys, and they change the wording to get around laws that have been put in place to protect the American worker. Corrupt practices everywhere, from accounting practices to the restructuring and seeking bailout money, has been paid out in bonuses for the CEOs. There's a quote from an economist named Mark W. Johnson. He says, "This corporate malfeasance has cost thousands of jobs, trillions of dollars in stockholder value, and skepticism of our once revered free economic system." Also, according to Michael Snyder, in July of 2010, he did a study, and he has some statistics that shows that the middle class is being wiped out of existence in the United States. One of these statistics is, in 1950, the ratio of the average executive paycheck to the average worker payable was 30-1. Since the year 2000, that ratio has exploded to between 300 and 500-1. Another statistic is 83% of all U.S. stocks are in the hands of 1% of the people. Since we don't live in a perfect world, these tax cuts for the rich, known as the trickle-down effect, does not work. My second argument is that the trickle-down effect actually takes away our American right to real freedom. In the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, by Thomas Jefferson, he said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, such that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." History in our country would be a lot different if we wouldn't have had people like Thomas Jefferson. He went head-to-head with a man named Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton argued that he thought that the power should be a concentrated power with an elite few. He also believed that he felt that humans were inherently flawed and made poor choices, and he also thought that a strong national bank would be a good thing to set up to pay the national debt. Now, Thomas Jefferson argued that he felt that the power should be spread over many, and he feared tyranny. He believed in education and hope for the human spirit. He said, we should educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. And he also championed liberty and he feared a national bank because he felt like it would take money from the poor and it would put it in the hands of the rich. Some people feel like in this country that we're teetering on disaster. With corporations and large banks, we've almost evolved into a Hamilton-type country. Why did our forefathers seem to see these dangers when the politicians today they cannot see? There was an article in USA Today that says, Abraham ended the Gettysburg Address with these famous words, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Well, as it seems to me that Lincoln's government is on life support. Our government has been so taken over by corporate interests that precious little is left for the American people. We must take our government back. We all have to answer the question, does giving the tax cuts to the rich really give us the American freedom? Or do we become enslaved to the rich so that they will produce jobs for us? We may have already become a country who does not have real American freedom. Some people say that the trickle-down effect is the only way that our country will get back on its feet economically, but studies have shown quite the opposite. There was an article by an economist, M. Edeberry, that says, starting in the 1950s, the tax rate for the rich was 91%, and in the year 2000, it dropped around 40%. Looking at the gross domestic product, there was no change, proving that there was no connection in growing the nation's economy. Second, using those same tax cuts from 1950s to the year 2000, he finds that there is a lack of connection between tax cuts for the rich and then income growth rate. Also, using the same tax cuts from the year 1950 to 2000 shows that the wages grew at least 1%. However, we look at when the tax rate was under 50% for the rich, there was an increase of less than 1%. Thus, it seems that the hourly wages grew more when the taxes were higher. And he also had, using the same tax cuts, starting in the 1950s to the year 2000, tax cuts were given to the rich. The annual change in unemployment doesn't seem to trend at all. Although the largest increase of 2.9% was in 1975 when the tax rate was at 70%. However, 3 of the 4 largest decreases occurred in the years when the tax rate was 91%. Studies show that we have a bigger and bigger tax cut to the rich, and there has been little to none in job creation. Tax cuts for the rich have been a huge waste of money for the American tax dollars. The economy started to crash in the early 2000s, and tens of thousands of jobs have been lost in our country. According to the AFL-CIO, we lost 2.5 million manufacturing jobs and 850,000 professional service and information sector jobs since 2001 in the United States. Corporations have either laid these jobs off or they have shipped them overseas. Our politicians need to remember that our government is of the people, by the people, and for the people, not just the top 1%. There was an article from R. Bennett in the USA Today that says, kids are once again in the streets, on Wall Street, and in many major cities. This time, it's not a protest against a war. It's about what kind of country we are to be. A country where the wealthiest 1% of the people use their power and privilege to control our federal government through the army of paid foot soldiers, lobbyists. Or a nation where everyone's voice is of equal value. We will be a country where the biggest rewards go not to the people who make the things and work hard to put those who have moved money around and take our jobs overseas to make more profit. And then there was a quote from Frederick Bastiat who says, when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men together in a society, they create for themselves, in a course of time, a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. Thus, the statement that the trickle-down is the only way to get us back on track is a terrible waste of American tax dollars. In summary, I have argued that our politicians should never use this as a political platform again. First, we would need to trust that they would be honest and ethical and trustworthy, the rich. Second, the trickle-down effect actually takes our Americans' right to real freedom away. And third, tax cuts are a gigantic waste of the American tax dollars. Trickle-down effect has never been successful, and we should not give it tax cuts anymore for promises that have never been upheld.